So I woke up to this in my timeline the other day.
Portland police share the community's concern about the barricades, occupation, and criminal activity on North Mississippi. Those present at the barricade should leave it behind, put down your weapons, and allow the neighborhood to return to peace and order. We're aware of the stockpile of weapons and the presence of firearms. We are aware of the threats to the community, to media, to police. We've seen the attacks. The Portland police will enforce the law and use force if necessary to restore order to the neighborhood. It can be avoided with those participating ending it peacefully by putting down their weapons and leave the barricade. The people living near the occupation have suffered for weeks. That has grown worse. We understand their suffering. If you live nearby, please report criminal activity in addition to the barricade by calling the police. Remain cautious as you come and go from your home or business. For your own safety, avoid confrontations around the occupation. Those without a need to enter should avoid the area for the time being. This occupation can be solved easily, and we ask those present at the barricades to leave them behind immediately. Allow the neighborhood to return to peace.
So this was in response to the new Antifa autonomous zone, this time set up in Portland, which must be, I don't know, the fifth autonomous zone or such that's been set up this year. And that's kind of the problem. I've lost count because this isn't really news anymore. And that's something I want to remind people. This isn't normal. And to make that point, let's go back a few years to when this wasn't a thing. The oldest piece of media I could find that references an Antifa-style organization in the modern sense that we know them was a 2014 documentary from Vice, in which they demonstrated a far-left group in Sweden, which were known as the Revolutionary Front. They attacked protesters, broke into people's houses, smashed up their houses, and one of them was even being charged for attempted murder for stabbing a man twice in the back.
Known as the Revolutionary Front, the faction of militant socialists has now become one of the most violent groups in Sweden. One of their affiliates was recently jailed for attempted murder after he stabbed a far-right supporter twice in the back. This footage of the Revolutionary Front smashing the home of a suspected fascist is one of the many attacks they film and publish on the internet. We met with a guy whose house is being trashed in this video. He asked us to withhold his name and identity for fear of further attacks, even though he denies being a member of any extreme right-wing groups.
I woke up one night to them smashing my front door in with an axe. And they also smashed my car the same night.
Yeah.
And tagged my door with RF. Basically, they opened those gates, went in, smashed the windows, and threw in the smoke grenade. And this is the same way they came when they smashed my place up.
Fortfarande arbetarklassens intressen som alltid måste vara i första hand. Och därför så samarbetar vi mot ett gemensamt mål, att det är ett socialistiskt samhälle.
I've read that some media reports will say you guys are essentially terrorists or you're extremists. What do you think to that?
The working class build this society. Every house you see, every road you see, the working class have built. And still we got nothing to say about how this society is gonna progress. So if the same society that pisses me on an everyday basis call me a terrorist, then I'm feeling kind of proud, actually.
Socialist terrorism isn't anything new, but these are the exact kind of tactics and ideology we see in modern-day Antifa. Anarchists and socialists destroying fascism by physically assaulting and attempting to murder its followers. Obviously, regardless of if the people they were attacking could be legitimately called fascist or not, they do not deserve to be physically attacked. And even Vice agreed with this in the documentary at the time. And as Tim Pool noted, these fringes have existed since at least the 2011 Occupy protests. However, their numbers and the tactics have exploded since the election of Donald Trump. But things really start to kick off with the events of Berkeley in 2017.
Those violent protests erupting overnight at UC Berkeley. The campus locked down as more than 1,000 people rallied against the appearance of a controversial editor from Breitbart, Milo Yiannopoulos.
Berkeley's mayor says it is time to confront the violent extremism on the left. Hundreds of black bloc anarchists were seen jumping the barriers, some attacking Trump supporters.
Firstly, this kicks off with a speech from Milo Yiannopoulos, who wanted to talk at a left-wing university and give a speech with fellow conservatives, in which he would say things like, conservatism good, progressivism bad. So in response, Antifa turned up, attacked random protesters, set fire to things in the building, attacked the building, and then pepper sprayed a woman for wearing a Make Bitcoin Great Again hat.
Overnight mayhem on campus. The University of California, Berkeley erupting in flames as over 1,000 came out to protest.
He's a fascist and Berkeley did not welcome him.
At least 6 people were injured, including this Trump supporter who was pepper sprayed.
Armed police had to be deployed to protect the building, and Milo was evacuated for his own safety. In the following month, the exact same thing happened. Conservatives gathered to march for Trump, and left-wing Antifa turned up to assault them for wanting to gather.
The pro-Trump crowd started their march, but were followed around Berkeley by the anti-Trump protesters. In the end, 10 people were reportedly arrested.
Notable from this protest was the famous bike lock incident, in which an ethics professor took a bike lock in a sock and hit a protester over the head.
Oh, he's bleeding. Yo. Hey, man, he's bleeding.
And the police were widely criticized for not keeping the two groups apart. And then again in August, the exact same pattern. Conservatives gather to give a protest, and left-wing Antifa turn up to attack them for gathering. Famously, CNN embedded themselves with an Antifa cell in Portland and tried to show them as some kind of heroic heroes fighting fascism, instead of the left-wing street thugs that they really are.
We are meeting members of the Rose City Antifa, short for anti-fascist. This group's main goal is to disrupt neo-Nazis and white supremacists, but also take on government and capitalism.
This saga only really came to an end when conservative Ben Shapiro came to Berkeley to give a speech. He had to pay $600,000 in security fees to ensure Antifa could not attack and disrupt the conservative gathering. You cannot run a democratic system like this. In a republic, the police not only have the right, but the duty to ensure people's rights to engage in politics, and to be safe from people like Antifa. And the same is true if it was reversed. If a socialist speaker or a socialist gathering was taking place, the police would also need to protect it from any nationalists wishing to harm the socialists. And the failure to protect conservatives from thugs like Antifa is what led to the creation of the Proud Boys groups. These groups rightfully deserve any criticism they get for anything wrong they do. However, their reason for existing is because the state did not protect the rights of conservatives in places like Berkeley. And it is that failure that led to street violence becoming part and parcel of American politics.
A lot of people think that we're like burning our city down and we're rioting and destroying everything. I mean, I think there's some level of truth to that.
Compare this to the socialists that make up British Antifa. There's a reason our Antifa are so tame by comparison. And thankfully, Vice News documented exactly how this happened. In 2009, 2 neo-Nazi boneheads were on a train to Wellington in southeast London. 40 militant anti-fascists were waiting for them on the platform. One shouted, "Kill the Nazis," and the mob attacked. One of the duo was beaten to the floor and set upon, while the other was chased onto the railway tracks. The anti-fascists started to disperse, but not before several riot vans had arrived. 6 activists were arrested on the scene, and several months later, there were dawn raids across the country. The British Transport Police arrested around 30 people in raids involving hundreds of officers. More than a dozen of those arrested were to face trial for conspiracy to commit violent disorder, an offence with a maximum sentence of 5 years. And a quote from a member of the British Antifa at the time, "By arresting so many suspected members, the police largely stopped the network from functioning." The bail conditions given to the arrested members made it very difficult for them to continue their political activity. Ryan explained, "I was banned from entering the entire national rail network, several London boroughs, and I couldn't even appear in public with more than 2 people. I was banned from attending any pre-planned gathering and wasn't allowed out of my house between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. Since then, confrontations between fascists and anti-fascists have been characterized more by pitched battles on large demonstrations, often broken up by baton-wielding riot cops, rather than fighting in dark side streets. This is how you keep violence out of politics. When anyone engages in acts of violence, the mainstream political sphere has to denounce the violence, and the police have to act to arrest those engaging in it. Otherwise, the violence escalates. This is one of the reasons why the Labour Party in the UK and the Democratic Party in the US are so dangerous. They are happy to allow violence to go on, provided it helps their cause. And they are happy to protect Antifa when they carry out attacks on conservatives because they think it helps them.